Okay. Right. I've spoken already about a lot of the stuff that my mother left behind. My name is Jane Shattock, and I have spoken quite a lot on Miles's thing about all these dictations that my mother left behind, which she got from the other side. And more recently, I have been trying to get them together to see if I can get someone to publish them. And when you start to look at these things, you suddenly realize that there is a pattern. So although my mother got all this stuff in the 70s, I think the last one she got was in 1982 before she got too ill. Then, but now it's all about now, about what's going on now. A while ago, I can't remember, I think it was 2019, somebody called David Goldberg put out a little message saying that he had found State Department papers saying that they were going to contrive a virus, frighten everybody to death with all these so-called vaccines, and this was going to be a way of culling us and also controlling us through fear. And more recently, somebody gave me a book written by Indra Jane Burley and a friend of hers. I was trying to find the book and I can't find it. I've put it somewhere. And I thought, my God, did we really go through that? Because the thing about members of the public, all of us, is that we forget. Bad things happen, and a few months later we've forgotten it, or we've forgotten how bad it was. So we've forgotten about standing 6 inches apart, or not being able to go out, shutting the economy down for the best part of 3 years, and then wondering why the whole of Europe and America is hanging by a thread. And now the Americans have just closed their economy down, causing untold suffering, I'm sure, for the last 40 days. And then they're opening it up again only until January. So who's behind this? Who is really trying to destroy everything? Our interest rates are going mad. So there are various things that have been suppressed. One book I think I might have mentioned ages ago was Archibald Moore Ramsey's book, The Nameless War. Very difficult to get hold of now. He was put in prison under the 18B Treason Act, I think 1939. He was one of these men. He's gone down as a traitor, but he was a man who fought bravely in the First World War and never wanted to see that happen again, and could see how things were building up, and there were people who were actually working to contrive a war, which is more, I think there were 25 million people killed in the Second World War. 2 disastrous wars which have wiped out so many young men who should have had families, who should have invented things, who should be here now. There are many girls like me who haven't married because they haven't met anybody that they wanted to marry, because so few men. There are plenty of men, but, so many marvelous men were killed. So anyway, this man wrote this book, and he wanted to say, it's quite a difficult, the way we think now, it's quite difficult to read these sort of books because they're very anti-Jewish. So he starts off with how Jewish power got going, certainly in this country and in Europe, and I think in America as well, with international banking. And he starts off talking about how, I can remember at school thinking to myself, how did Cromwell how did he manage to finance the Civil War? How much, his troops were well dressed, had proper uniforms, they had good horses, they had plenty of ordnance. Where did they get, how did they just suddenly afford that? So he tells you how there was a chain of Jewish merchants throughout Holland and Europe who financed it. And also the Puritans, who really kept Mosaic law. They had the Rump Parliament, which kept Charles I out of London. and any MPs who would have voted against things. So there's no democracy. And there were also a few merchants within the City of London who also financed Cromwell and his merry men. So we then had 10 years of awfulness, and eventually we had the king back. And the royal family is, that when you look at one human being, but it's the panoply of it, isn't it? That is the thing that we are all fond of in this country. You can't look at any one person and say, well, he's a perfect man or she's a perfect woman. But they provide a service for us, which I'm beginning to wonder about our MPs. Anyway, this man who, David Goldberg, I'm getting muddled now, David Goldberg, who said that he prophesied that there was a plan to bring about this scandemic, and that there would eventually be world government out of Israel and Trump would be king. And I thought, well, how's that going to be? And suddenly you notice that all the RMPs and most of the Senate are all receiving money from Israel. And they're all pro it. We're watching now while Benjamin Netanyahu, I call him Netanyahu, how could they stand by and not have anything to say about what's going on to the Palestinians, who've been there for centuries and centuries and centuries, and the farmers? They're being pushed off their land. The whole of Gaza is being destroyed. Many of us have marched about in London, not the dark politicians, are at all bothered because they're getting handouts. So this book starts off with the British Revolution. That was in, when was it? It started in 1649, I think, or 1659. And then more recently, this book, a lot of people will have seen a little excerpt of it, and somebody sent me the PDF. Well, I'm not going to read the PDF, but I went into the library to see if they could find this book for me in one of the archives somewhere, because Farnborough Library is pretty good. They actually got me the Pistis Sophia, which turned up in a sort of scroll form, which I thought was amazing. So I went and asked this woman if she could find it, and they couldn't. But she found it on Amazon, so I ordered it for £12.87. The Secret Government or the Hidden Hand, and it's written by Major General Count Spiridirovich, and he's written it in. It's not terribly well printed or anything, and he's absolutely vitriolic about the Rothschilds and about Judaism. But unfortunately, as you read it, you realize that it's happening. And you can see how everybody's interest rates have gone up. I think I pay 39% on my arranged overdraft. And because since the scandemic, my little business sort of hit the skids, I am living on just my pension nowadays. So, and selling the old gold bracelet. So I'm not terribly well off. So I very often am using my overdraft. Anybody who's got a credit card would never have taken it out at 25 or 35%. But now you find you're paying that. It is really worth reading this book because you can see the plan and you can see that what is happening. And we're all nice. We all deserve to live in this world, and we do deserve freedom. They're putting up 5G everywhere, and all these wretched telegraph poles with cobwebs hanging everywhere, and this is part of their cage that they're going to be putting us in. Everybody knows about it, and anyone who's watching this will be fully aware of what's coming to us. So we really must read these books. So Archibald Moore Ramsay, The Nameless War, difficult to get. It's out of print, but if you go on the internet, you'll find a printer. This one took a while to come. I've given it to various people. It's not written in the stylish way that most of our books are now. I think it was published in 1956. So he was put in prison in 1939, I think, and eventually allowed out in 1945. And he, by which time we've had the disastrous war, he went to Parliament and gave his address there, and then retired from politics and wrote this book. It's well researched, and it's impressive. And this man also is a tremendous. I already have. There's a little picture in the front, which was apparently commissioned by Roosevelt. So he's writing from about the mid 1800s, and this book was banned in 1926, but you can now get it on Amazon or eBay. I think I got it off eBay actually. But it is really quite a compelling read. So I started off thinking, my God, am I going to read? It is unputable downable, and you suddenly realise that the plan is well ahead to get all our politicians on side with money, and they are not working for us. So they are all treasonous, and they are all working for Israel. GB News, that is supposed to be representing the British people, they are totally Israel, Israel, Israel. And the Israelis deserve, in fact, more recently, I've seen people in Tel Aviv on the television protesting. They want a change of government, and they also want research into the 7th of October, because it's very likely that the whole thing was arranged by Netanyahu anyway. And Hamas I think, was funded by him. So I don't know all the ins and outs of it, and I may not be right about that, but most definitely it was fishy, because if the Israelis have such a security system, how come the festival was moved at the last minute and no forces came to protect those people for 7 hours? So there's something very fishy about the whole thing. I mean, I think it was one of Netanyahu's henchmen who said, this is our 9/11. And we now know that 9/11 was a put-up job as well. So, and yet, the sort of scar of that and the horror that everybody felt, we've sort of receded into the distance. But we need to keep all these things foremost in our minds, especially at the moment. We're living in very bad times. There you are, Miles, I've finished.